Are everyone in the congregation able to hear me okay? I think the sound is good. I would love to invite those who feel comfortable to move forward if you're sitting in the back. Doug, Gary, I won't call you out by name. Please do so. And Danny told me that I have one time a year to use this gavel. So I'm going to do that, okay? I'd like to call the annual meeting of Temple Jeremiah to order. It is my pleasure to see you all here this evening. I'm Scott Levin. I have the privilege of serving as the president of this amazing congregation and community. And I think that wine tasting might be the answer for the annual meeting. So really, thank you everyone for being here and for carving out a little bit of time to join us. Can I have the next slide, please? We do have an agenda which looks a little bit more ominous than it really is. I promise we'll try and keep this to about an hour at the most, but we'll approve our minutes. Rabbi Cohen's going to deliver the Devar Torah. I'm going to give a brief state of the congregation, and then we'll go through the rest of the items. Can I have the next slide, please? The first order of business is to approve the minutes from April 27th that were submitted by our esteemed recording secretary, Aileen Frost. So if I can entertain a motion to approve those minutes? Thank you. Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Wonderful. The minutes pass unanimously. Have the next slide, please. Rabbi Cohen, the Devar Torah.
Thank you, Scott. I'm a little bit confused. I thought I had an hour for the Devar Torah. Is that not? Okay. I invite you to join with me in the blessing, or at the end to say Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We are in the midst of counting the Omer, counting the days between Passover and Shavuot. And one of the exercises that we're given during this time is to engage in study, and in particular, to study Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the sages, aphorisms, guidance in how to lead lives of blessing. And in the first chapter of this Mishnah Avot, Pirkei Avot, we have one of the better known teachings. Al shlosha devarim ha'olam omed, al haTorah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al gemilut chasadim. Upon three things does the world stand or depend or exist: for Torah, upon Torah, avodah, which is usually translated as worship, and then gemilut chasadim, acts of love and kindness. So this is in the second verse of the first chapter. At the very end of the first chapter, we have, this is Shimon HaTzadik, who is given attribution for this teaching. And at the end, there's another Shimon Bar Yochai, who says, Al shlosha devarim ha'olam omed, upon three things does the world depend: al ha'emet, ve'al hadin, ve'al ha'shalom. On truth, on justice, and on shalom, which we usually translate as peace, but better wholeness, well-being. Right? And so, what's going on? What does the world depend on? Is this simply an oppositional teaching, or is there something else going on? And I was reading from one of my teachers, Rabbi Michael Strassfield, who says that actually one leads to the other. They are actually connected. That certainly the world is founded upon Torah, upon study, upon following the way of the path of blessing, certainly on worship and having a spiritual connection, being connected to God, and on, of course, on Gemilut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness, and that it should lead us to the other three, right? To creating a world that is a world of truth based on honesty, a world that is filled with justice, and a world that leads to, or actions that lead us to live in a world that is shalom, a sense of wholeness and peace, of well-being. So as we continue our journey from Egypt to Sinai, from Passover to Shavuot, may our journey bring us closer to the fulfillment of our responsibilities to study Torah, to engage in worship, to have a rich spiritual life, to engage in acts of loving kindness that will lead us to a world that is a world built upon emet, truth and honesty, justice, and leading to shalom. Amen.
Amen. Yasher Koach, Rabbi, thank you. Can I have the next slide, please? So I wanted to just give a very brief state of the congregation to the congregation. And I wanted to start off by saying that the state of our congregation is strong. You've heard that before, right? And that is not a small statement. 2+ years into our COVID-19 pandemic, transitioning from norms to shutdown to new norms. The very fact that we're here in person with people able to listen digitally if they wish. It's been 2 years, and as I said in my President's address, Erev Rosh Hashanah this past year, it has been traumatic. There has been trauma that we've lived through, trauma we're trying to heal from, and trauma-based growth that we're trying to grasp at. And through all of that, we've maintained an incredible partnership between lay leadership, of which is here this evening, and our clergy leadership. And we are incredibly blessed to have that situation here, because that is not necessarily a given. We try to organize ourselves on 4 pillars: communication and brand voice, engagement, resources, and governance. Communication and brand voice is how do we exchange ideas and communicate with the congregation at large through our digital press, our paper press, through emails, and then how do we receive feedback? And at the board meetings, for the board members who are here, you know that we, on the agenda, try and address a piece of that at every meeting. So our Director of Communications, our Communications Coordinator, Meredith Byrne, and Danny, and all of the senior staff, the school, a lot of thought and effort goes into how do we message the joy of belonging, the connection of being a part of Temple Jeremiah in everything that we do. It is a work in progress. It is not easy work, but it is something we actively think of. Engagement is the second pillar. And when you think about engagement, you can think of many different things, from music to adult learning, to the youth programming, to the J-Quest schooling. So we're always thinking about how do we engage our members and keep them connected to Temple Jeremiah. Resources is the third pillar. And we've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to best utilize and garner resources. I am very proud to say that our membership is solid. We are roughly a 775 household congregation. That is not too far off from pre-COVID days when we were maybe 800, 825. There were many, many more households that were on the books that were kind of being carried along that weren't paying dues or contributing a community commitment. we have a much more accurate account of what our membership is, and we've been very, very solid throughout the pandemic, which is incredible. And our budget committee, you'll hear a little bit about this shortly from Sue Weitzman, our treasurer, and our controller, Brian Rubin, in how we've tried to be very responsible in managing our resources and are able to present to you this evening yet another balanced budget. The fourth pillar is governance, and that has to do with our board of directors, our nominating committee, and how we choose a slate each year, and how we continue to seek the wisdom of past presidents through our past presidents council. Those are the four pillars: communication and brand voice, engagement, resources, and governance. I just want to mention three other things that we've spent a lot of time on during the last 2 years that I've had the privilege of serving as president. One goes without saying, and that's COVID. The COVID task force meets every 6 weeks. We try and look at the data, use what science is available to us, and recognize when science might not have the answers for us, and try and thread the needle as to what is the best decision for the congregation to move things forward. The second is security. This isn't something new, but something we've certainly additionally focused on. And through Danny and board members like Michael Schack, who serves on the building committee and is a long-time board member, closing out his 6th term, final term, 18 years serving on the board, in making sure that our congregation is as secure as we can make it without causing people to be afraid of being in synagogue. And that is another needle to thread. And then the last thing that we've spent quite a bit of time on through two initiatives. One is through the JCFS and the other through NADA. So let me talk about the JCFS first. JCFS is the Jewish Child and Family Services, and they have put on a program that we are participating in called Safer Synagogues. And this is about how do we keep our children safe? How do we keep our teens safe? How do we keep women safe? How do we keep genders of all types, non-binary genders safe within our community? And we're actively involved in training staff in how to do that, because this is a point of connection for all of the above. And then with NADA, which is the National Association of Temple Administrators, we are very blessed in that our own Danny Glassman, our executive director, is an officer within that national organization, and very, very well recognized, and is able to bring everything he learns back to the congregation to teach us what we need to know about DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yes, diversity and equity inclusion also applies to a Jewish community. And how do we do that here? And we've had active and interesting conversations to try and make sure that we are as progressive and on the vanguard, on the cutting edge of how we do contracting and how we hire people and how we manage staffing within a congregation where we know that things can not always follow Torah, let's say. So that's kind of a snapshot on everything that kind of runs through my mind, when I think about how do we stay on track, how do we steer ourselves in really difficult times. It's the 4 pillars, it's COVID, it's security, it's JCFS and NADA, and the state of the congregation is strong. With that, I'd like to invite Sue Weitzman, our treasurer. Next slide, please. for the proposed budget report.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for being here. My remarks will be pretty short because, as Scott alluded to, financially, we're in a really terrific place, and I thank each and every one of you for that. It's an honor for me to be your Temple Jeremiah treasurer and to be able to work all year with such a dedicated and incredibly talented clergy, senior leadership, budget committee members who spend a great deal of time all year working on the budget, and the entire board of directors to ensure that Temple's financially strong in spite of what has been a 2-year battle with ever-changing conditions for the way that we not only worship, but for the way we live. And it's truly taken a village, and each and every one of you are part of that village, our community, to get us through it. So despite the challenges, I'm very pleased to report that last month, a balanced budget for the upcoming fiscal 2022-23 year was presented to the board of directors and unanimously approved. Succinctly, we are increasing for the next fiscal year an increase in income, through community commitment, facility income, philanthropy, as well as an increase in expenses. Although budget committee members are known for their looking at every line item, challenging, and then figuring out a way to balance the budget. And I'm so appreciative of everybody's talent and experience in that regard. Something to note is that while we are budgeting for a slight increase in membership revenue this upcoming year, 50% of member households are paying an adjusted annual commitment fee. For the past 2 years, we have not increased our commitment fees, though to balance this next fiscal year's budget, we will have a small membership increase fee of 3%. As we all know, a budget is made up of more than just income and expenses. It is comprised of you, our Temple community. And the foundation of our continued financial strength lies in holding expenses in line as best we can, while also ensuring that our temple is well maintained and a place we can feel all very safe in and proud of as well. We look forward to this coming fiscal year with certain goals to further increase our community membership, increase the income that our building can generate through outside uses of our facility, and despite our own individual membership commitment, increase our personal philanthropy in our sense of that word, a giving back to the temple, which will help ensure that our community stays strong and endures for generations to come. Thank you.
So as you can see from those slides, the proposed operating income and then the proposed operating expense. The next slide shows those items. And then through the last couple of years, we have been able to partake and receive in the PPP forgiveness program, as well as employee retention credits, which has helped us to balance the budget. So you'll see that that kind of red zero at the bottom right of the slide is the balanced budget. And with the income reserve that we've been able to set aside and utilize, we still have about $35,000 held over for future budget challenges that might come in the next fiscal year. Does that make sense? Okay. Next slide, please. Oh, no, stay on that slide, please. So, yeah, and Sue also mentioned the word philanthropy, and I know Rabbi Cohen and I, based on some recent articles, have even talked about the meaning of the word philanthropy, whether that is the appropriate word for us to use. Should we be thinking of giving as a better word? There's a whole literature about philanthropy taking a little bit of a turn in some circles where someone will give money and restrict its use so narrowly that it almost defeats the purpose. We don't have that situation here, but it just brings into mind that even when we think about how to develop our culture of securing resources and funds, how do we best do that as a community? So we'll look forward to more conversations about that. I do need a motion to approve the budget unless there are any questions. I hear a motion. Thank you, Aileen. Is there a second? Thank you. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, our budget passes balanced unanimously. Thank you so much. I think the wine tasting is a good idea. The next item, if I could have the next slide. I'd like to invite Doug Schabelman up for the nominating report.
The next slide is what's in there. Perfect. Hi, everybody. So I'm here, I'm Doug Schabelman, I'm the co-chair of the nominating committee, co-chair with the real chair, Barb Miller, who couldn't make it tonight. If any of you have had the opportunity to work with Barb, you all just work for Barb, you don't just work with Barb. It's a great way to work. It's a great way to think of things. But it's my job to report the nominating committee completed its task of nominating a board for 2022-23. And the nominating slate, okay, actually, well, first we'll start. These are the people who are slated to serve for a period of 1 year, which ends in June of 2023. And I think everybody on this has been already up, is on this board already, except Jerry Tater, I believe, is the one person who's moving up to the executive committee. Members of the board of directors slated to serve for a period of 3 years. So these are the new board members. There's 3 new board members, 2 who were retained. The first and most exciting is Brad Buchanan. And we have Dana Garbarski, sorry, Dana, and Jill Patano. And then A.B. Rubenstein and Tanya Silverstein will be remaining on the board. The nominating committee that took place, and everybody obviously had a big hand in this, in setting up, giving names, giving ideas. As I mentioned, Barb, myself, Paul Chaikin, these are all board members, a few board members, Shirley Craven, Christine Kaufman, Kim Radkin, Tanya Silverstein, Valerie Slotnick, and Julie Weinberg. And then these are the people who deserve quite a bit of praise for, except for myself. They get quite a bit of credit for completing their board service. David Goroff, myself, and Mark Sulkin, but I'll take a quick moment about Michael Schack, and I know it was mentioned before, 18 years on the board, somebody who's very inspiring to everybody who's been a board member. I think you've seen the work that he's done, but hopefully some of it has been behind the scenes. But Michael has been a tremendous presence on the board, as well as a member of the congregation. And everybody really wants to thank Michael for the work that he has done. So with that, I'm presenting you with the slate for 22-23.
Thank you so much, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So just for the Board of Directors slated to serve for a period of 3 years. I am also very excited about Brad Buchanan, but I am equally excited for Dana Garbarski and Jill Patano, as I know Doug is as well. I think Jill is listening in digitally. She was not feeling 100% and thought it would be best to do this remotely. And then just a quick word about Michael Shack, in saying that his service has been inspiring and dedicated and 18 years in the making. And there was actually an anonymous donation to the Brotherhood in his honor, in the amount of a couple of $1,000 actually, to Brotherhood to honor his service on the board. So I wanted to thank that anonymous donor and also to recognize Michael again for his service. I'd like to invite Rabbi Heaps to honor our Afghan refugee resettlement volunteers. And I guess I should say that it is impossible for us to recognize and honor every single volunteer service that has happened this past year. So please recognize that we did our very best to kind of cultivate and settle on a few that we would honor tonight.
This is not at all a fully encompassing list of everyone who has donated time and care and everything that we could ever ask from all of you. This is just a little taste of some of the people that we would that we like to lift up. And so earlier this year, Rabbi Cohen and our social justice chairs were contacted by HIAS asking for us to sponsor and to help a Afghan refugee family resettle here. And I'm pretty sure it took maybe an hour for so many people to raise their hand and say, I'm here for whatever you need. And so just a couple of people who have had even more, so much that they have been able to give in terms of time, in terms of care, helping with job searches and apartments and language barriers and learning how to grocery shop and everything that comes with moving to a strange country in a strange land. You have been our light to be able to truly welcome the stranger. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to forget anyone. So I have the list in front of me. Scott also has the list in front of me.
Yes, next slide, there we go.
But if, as I say your name, if you would just stand so that we can recognize you and all of all you have done for our community and for our global community. Our co-chairs of Dana Garbarski, Marcia Osher, and Barb Miller, who I believe Barb's online. Our mentors of Stephen Miller, Marcia, John McLean, Joyce Suchlin, Vicki Siegelman, Diane Bilowski, Kathy Friedman, Lori Cash, and Jean Giesecke. And our people in charge of apartment collection, that's a long title, Dana, Jill Patano, and Julie Becker. So I know a few of you are here. I've seen a couple of you, but I see you're all being claimed by the other people. So thank you so very much. Thank you for opening your hearts, and thank you for opening our home to people who we would not be Jeremiah without welcoming some extra strangers into our midst. So you are our example of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just a brief, quick story, very quick. I had the honor of being on the Bima this past Saturday for one of the bar mitzvah students, and his Devar Torah talked about a lot of things. The invasion of Ukraine, the power of unity in surviving as a community, and his Tikkun Olam project was with a couple of kids from this Afghan family. And the way he spoke, this is a 13-year-old, the way he spoke about his interaction with this Afghan child at a games facility where you get those tickets, and then you turn them in and you kind of get prizes for how many tickets you have. The way he spoke about that was so incredibly eloquent. So my point is that these outreach efforts just ripple out so much further than we even ever think of. It was an incredible Devar Torah that this teenager delivered. Next slide. Oh, here we go. I'd like to invite Cantor Friedman to honor our volunteer choir members and our choir director, Paul Dykstra.
So it's been quite a couple years. So many of us rehearsed. We continued our dedication weekly, every Tuesday night, most of the time on Zoom during the lockdown. And then whenever we were able to come back together, everyone was so creative and so willing to just go with it, rehearsing outside in the freezing, right? Being willing to, on the high holy days, preparing, and then having to divvy up who was doing which services. And this choir, you were just such a bright, shining star, not only in this temple, but in this community. I don't know if many of you know this, but the adult choir, our adult choir, is one of the only temple choirs that rehearses weekly, that sings once a month. And I am so incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. If you would please stand when I say your name. Gil Edelstein, Ilan Adler, Lynn Amos is not here tonight, but we are honoring you if you're watching, Lynn. Howard Brenner, also, we're honoring you if you're watching. Karen Brown. Lauren Cogan was not able to be here tonight, but also very dedicated, so grateful for her service. Minna Einhorn, a relatively new member to our temple and to our choir. Barb Fisher, thank you, Barb, for everything you've done. Aline Frost, Stuart Green, Avi Greenfield, Deborah Grossman, Randy Gurian, Michael Kaufman, Lauren Cogan, Julie Kosrin, Joyce Landau, Robin Lavin, Lisa Levy, who also serves as our choir recording secretary, if you will, who makes sure that she has all of the dates and times, all of the notes. We are so grateful to you, Lisa. Our very own Dr. Ann Lidsky, Jackie Lutz, Michael Mitzen, Greg Richards, Phyllis Richmond, Alexis Ruda, Myra Schneider, who could not be here tonight, but we're so grateful for your service, Judy Tater, Amy Ticho, and Jim Weiss, who's also responsible for the wonderful chairs that we have now in the community space. So thank you for everything. You can sit down. I'd also like to honor Maestro Paul Dykstra. Please rise, Maestro Paul Dykstra. Paul came on whenever David Lorenzen left. We were it was really kind of scary what we were going to do. But Paul came to us from Temple Sholom, from one of my mentors, Cantor Aviva Katzman, and he has just made this community his own. He has come every Tuesday night to rehearse, even though he was not scheduled to or being compensated for such. He came because he loves all of our choir so much. He loves our community so much. And we are so incredibly grateful to you, Paul, for everything you have done for us tonight and for our year. And we look forward to so many other wonderful years of making music with you. Thank you so much for everything. And now we'd like to present, oh yeah, please come. And now I'd like to invite the choir to come as we would like to share with you tonight a piece that Paul brought to us by an English composer, John Rutter. It's called Prayer for Ukraine. It is actually done in Ukrainian, but we're going to do it in English. Lord God, guard and shelter Ukraine.
This piece by John Rutter, who's one of the foremost composers of choral music in the world, was offered to choir directors around the world, and ordinarily this is how he makes his living. But he was so concerned about Ukraine, he offered it to all of us, just on the ability to be able to support what's happening for humanity in Ukraine. So I think it's an amazing thing that John Rutter did. It's a great piece.
And also, we'd like to also acknowledge Mary Ann Kim, our wonderful organist, who's also been our pianist on Friday night this year. Thank you so much, Mary Ann, for being with us.
Lord God, guard and shelter Ukraine. Lord God, guard and shelter Ukraine. Lord God, guard and shelter Ukraine. Grant her strength, Lord, her Lord, and salvation. Lord God, guard and shelter Ukraine. Lord God, guard and shelter Ukraine. Grant her strength, Lord, hope, Lord, and salvation.
Thank you, Cantor. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mary Ann. And thank you, choir. That was phenomenal. From strength to strength. One of the things that I was a little bit nervous about with listing people's names on these various slides. Could you just go back one, Rabbi Heaps? Just as an example of these names, is that that it wasn't complete. And so I wanted to mention a few other names for the apartment collection and the mentors in the Afghan family that were omitted from the list. And additional thanks go out to Eric Morrow, Jackie Crashen, Jack Craven, Patty Lurie, Judy Homer, Laurel Shapiro, Hershey Papadis, and Ken Lorch are also part of that group. So thank you to those folks as well. If we can go, yes. So, you know, the annual meeting is a little bit of kind of a peek behind the curtains as to what goes on here and what it takes to run the congregation. And the reason I say that is because there is so much that we take for granted in how the congregation is set up every day, taken down every day, cleaned, food set out. And we could not do that without the incredible maintenance staff that we have. Juan Carlos Sanchez and his team do an incredible job. In the heat of COVID, at the peak of the first surge, they were here, ready, willing, and able to do anything we asked. We also have an incredible administrative staff. And Rabbi Heaps, if you could go to the next slide. Meredith Byrne, who is our communications coordinator, Shira Brandhandler, who is our youth coordinator, Phyllis Berg, who sits in Rabbi's circle and handles so many pieces of communication each and every day, Angeles Castro as part of our maintenance crew, Rabbi Helbron, contributing to the J-Quest and Hebrew School and mentoring students every day, working with Matt in his new role. Reed Hewitt, who is here every Friday night operating our digital corner to make sure that people who are tuning in digitally are able to do that. Ann Kaplan, helping with the school and helping Matt and with students. Leslie Landman, our director of philanthropy, who was so pivotal for our capital campaign and continuing outreach to garner resources. Cindy Lieb, our B'nai Mitzvah coordinator, who helps walk families through what can be a pretty complicated process. Jill Nutkus, who's working in the office and helping with the books and accounting and anything that Danny asks her to do. And then Jean and Jesse and Juan Carlos also with our maintenance staff. So I would very much welcome a round of applause for these amazing folks. Thank you very much. It is my privilege to ask Matt Rissian to come up to the bima for the presentation of the Toddy Gray Diane Mary Katz Scholarship.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here at my first annual meeting. And I'm honored to be here to present the Toddy Gray and Diane Mary Katz Scholarship Award. Toddy Gray was born in 1913 in Chicago. She was the first member of her family to attend college, and she graduated from Northwestern. She was a warm and loving person who loved being with her family and friends. She always made time for those she loved and set aside special time to be with each of her grandchildren. It is an honor to recognize through this award her caring nature, sense of humor, and integrity. Diane Mary Katz was only 32 years old when she passed away. Diane was confirmed at Temple Jeremiah and graduated from Glenbrook South High School and Wesleyan University. After some time working in New York, she returned to Chicago and graduated from Northwestern University Law. she eventually became an attorney with Sidley Austin. Diane loved to travel and even went to Vietnam on her own. She had a great sense of adventure as well as being an ethical and caring person. Jim Gray and Bobby Katz set up this scholarship fund so that their loved ones would be honored through giving an involved student from Temple Jeremiah an opportunity to receive the education that they wanted. It is my honor tonight to recognize our Toddy Gray and Diane Mary Katz Scholarship winner, Sloan Schabelman. Sloan's essay stood out to us because it truly embodied the passions of Toddy Gray and Diane Mary Katz. Sloan developed a passion for social justice at only 5 years old, helping to volunteer at Temple Jeremiah's Feed the Hungry program. Just as Diane Mary Katz had a love for travel and adventure, Sloan also shared in her essay the lasting impact that a Temple Jeremiah teen Jetty Costa Rica trip had on her. In addition to the many leadership roles she has held at Temple Jeremiah, Sloan has been involved in school service clubs, school newspaper, the variety show, singing, and Onward House, a program where she tutors kids at a community center in the city once a week. The following quote from Sloan's essay perfectly embodies why she was our perfect choice for the scholarship and why all of us at Temple Jeremiah are so proud of her. She wrote, "Temple Jeremiah has truly been like a second home to me. I've grown up here, I've learned here, loved here, laughed here, cried here, struggled here, and been shaped into the person I am here. A member since she was just 3 years old, she's been influenced by the people and programs at Temple Jeremiah more than she has words to express. From making new friends, volunteering, exploring leadership opportunities, working with kids, and even singing in our choir, she has been blessed with so many amazing opportunities that have made her the person she is today. So it is my honor to recognize the 2022 Toddy Gray and Diane Mark Katz Scholarship winner, Sloan Schabelman."
Mazel tov to the Schabelman family. Sloan, so well deserved. I'm just looking at my slides here. Okay. So our last presentation of the evening is that of the Robert H. Goldberg Award for Service to the Temple Jeremiah Community. Rabbi Cohen?
Thank you, Scott. A word about Bob Goldberg of blessed memory. Bob was a founding member of Temple Jeremiah in the late 1950s, and the temple came into existence in 1959. He was one of a group that came from a sister congregation. They were very, very happy with classical Reform Judaism, but unhappy with the anti-Zionist plank that came with classical Reform. And so they helped joining together with a group of interfaith families that also felt like they didn't have a home in the area in the 1950s that was welcoming. And so Bob was very instrumental in bringing those groups together and creating the congregation that we have today. Bob served as the 4th president of the congregation, and he remained incredibly active throughout his life. For his 100th birthday, in 2013, we created this award with his family to recognize the volunteer spirit that was so important to him, not only through word, but through the way that he lived his life here at Temple Jeremiah and in the community at large, benefiting so many people that it would be impossible to count them. And so this evening, we continue this tradition of honoring a member who has serve the congregation in an outstanding way during the course of the year. It is hard to determine one person because this is a congregation that thrives on volunteerism, and people continually step forward to help when help is needed. And so, President?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Rabbi. It is my honor and privilege to invite Dr. Corey Franklin to the Bema as the recipient of the Bob H. Goldberg Award. As Corey is making his way up here, just a little word about Corey. Dr. Franklin is a critical care pulmonologist who spent the bulk of his career directing the ICU at Cook County. And I can tell you, as a family physician, landing in the president's position in the middle of the first surge, and at my own hospital in the middle of the first surge, to have Corey on the COVID-19 task force as another physician, as a voice of reason, as Temple Jeremiah's Dr. Fauci, as he has often been called, has been a blessing. And I just want to say thank you so much to everything that you have given us as far as guidance and wisdom and keeping us grounded and seeing us through, and congratulations.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Rabbi. A couple of remarks. I just want to thank the board and the Temple Jeremiah community for this honor. It really means a lot. As Shakespeare said in Twelfth Night, I can no other answer make but thanks and thanks. My philosophy is to brush up on my Shakespeare, as Cole Porter said, and use it as often as possible, because I figure if people recognize it, they'll think I'm smarter than I am. And if they don't recognize it, they'll think I'm really smarter than I am. Without minimizing my gratitude, I just want to make a couple of brief remarks in keeping with my natural contrarian tendencies. I'd like to give 3 reasons why I should not have gotten this award. The first is there are many more people who have invested more time, effort, and sweat equity, and many of them are in this room. And they are the ones who really deserve this. It's sort of like those Hall of Fame inductions in baseball where somebody has marginal statistics, or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame where they've done a couple of good songs. And there are people with far better qualifications who wait to get in. So I sincerely hope that all of those people get their notice and their due. Some of them have tonight, and I hope everybody does in the future. The second reason is that I was part of the COVID committee, and they all did a good job. And I can tell you from past experience on other committees, it doesn't work that way. I've been on a couple of COVID committees, and it doesn't always work that way. And everybody on that COVID committee should get a mention. I wish I could break the award up to all of them. And the third reason is, well, I'd like to talk about my Omicron prediction. The first week in November, the committee asked me, well, where do you think things are going to be after everybody comes back from winter break after the first of the year? And I said, well, you know, I've done the statistics, this chart, and I said, I think we're going to have about 10,000 cases nationwide. And about 10 days later, Omicron hit, and on January 5th of this year, there were 500,000 cases nationwide. So I didn't just get it wrong. I got what we used to call in the intensive care unit the MPE, maximum possible error. You didn't just get it wrong, you got it wrong by as much as you couldn't try to get it that wrong. 1 year, Sports Illustrated in the spring picked the World Series winner, and they picked the Cleveland Indians. Not only did the Indians finish last in the American League that year, but they had the worst record in baseball. So I can sympathize. But what can you do? All you can do is persevere. And the challenge is not to be the best, but rather to do our best and strive every day to be just a little bit better. So I close again by saying, I can no other answer make but thanks and thanks.
With that, are there any calls from the floor? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Can I use this one more time, Dana? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.